correct?
Yeah, Aleph, hey.
Right. Three trees which belong to three people combined, and one may plow the entire Beitzah for their sake. And what space must be left between them? Rabbi Gamliel says for oxen to pass through with their implements. If 10 saplings are spread out over a Beitzah, the entire Beitzah may be plowed for their sake until Rosh Hashanah. If they are planted in a row and surrounded by a fence, it's permitted to plow them only as much as they require. Saplings and Greek gourds combined in a Beit Tzar. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamil says if there are 10 gourds within a Beit Tzar, the entire Beit Tzar may be plowed until Rosh Hashanah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, we said we had a special heter for natios, for saplings,
Right.
and that is that they can be plowed up until Rosh Hashanah, where other tree fields can only be plowed up until Shavuos. So what's the definition of a natia? And that's what you asked yesterday. So Mishnah Ches tells us, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, Omer, Ad yacholu, says until they become chulin. Now, chulin, it's slightly ambiguous because we're probably talking about orla here,
Mm-hmm.
but it could be revai. It could be that revai is also treated as a sort of kodesh, and therefore it might be up until the fifth year. So we'll leave it up to the philosophers to debate whether it's what is it, whether his opinion is up until the fourth year, up until the fifth year. Rabbi Yeshua says, Bas Sheva Shanim, they get 7 years when they're called saplings. Rabbi Akiva takes a somewhat more nuanced approach, which may be more of a common sense approach, and he says, Natia Kishma. He says, as long as people look at them and say, hey, that's a sapling.
Hmm.
And presumably different species of trees look different, and so as long as people look and say, oh, that's a sapling, then you have the heter to plow the field before up until Rosh Hashanah, before Shemitah.
So
Um,
it's clear. When I
hmm?
look at if I look at a tree, it could be a sapling. To me, it's a thin little tree or something, but it's still a tree. And I'm thinking of sapling as being like a little thing that you just put in the ground and that's it. And eventually it'll grow and grow and grow. But you're saying here, or they're saying here,
I
Rabbi
think
Shua
I
says
think
it's
when we're
7 years
talking
old.
about when people call it a sapling, I think that is confined to the community of people who know about agriculture.
Right. Okay.
With all respect.
I agree with that. I agree with that. Because Rabbi Shua is saying 7 years old. At 7 years old, I would think would be a tree already. Just some kind of tree.
Yeah, you
You
can have
know.
a. I mean, I'm just thinking of the trees in my garden. By the time they were 7 years old, they were gazunder trees.
Right. So that they're calling sapling. All right.
Yeah, anyway, ilan shen nigmam v'hotzi chalifin. Now, what is the halacha of a tree that got cut down? And now it's sprouted. Sometimes when you cut down a tree, it'll send out shoots from its base.
Right.
Okay, so what's the din of those things? So now let's say you've got a field of those. Are you allowed to plow that? Mitefach ulamata. If the tree was chopped down to less than a tefach from the ground, kinatia, then it's considered as if it's a sapling. Okay. Incidentally, this also has ramifications in the din of orla. So if you had a tree that was, previously 10, 20 years old, and it got cut down to less than a tefach, and now it sprouts again, orla starts again as well.
Yeah.
So you've got a heter along with a chumrah over here,
Right.
because now you're going to restart the clock for orla. Okay, mitefach or lamala. However, if it's got more than a tefach off the ground, ke'ilan, divrei Rabbi Shimon, and the halacha is according to him. So both for sowing for plowing before Shemitah, and for orla, it is considered as if it's a full-grown tree. Now, just to mention, we mentioned all the stuff about plowing the fields, and this Tosefes Sheviis that we had, that we said no, you're not allowed to plow from Pesach for a grain field, and from Shavuos for a tree field. All this was actually abolished by Rabban Gamliel and his Beis Din.
Mm-hmm.
They said it's just not working, and they lifted this Tosefes Sheviis, so that plowing was permitted all the way up until Rosh Hashanah for everywhere. So just to mention that all this halacha that we're learning over here is really a moot point,
Uh-huh.
because in any case it was reversed. It's kind of like
First,
the Takanas Ezra, that we had in brachas, if you recall, with
Mm.
the Balkari not being allowed to learn Torah, which just didn't last.
Correct.
Okay. Perik base. Ad Amasai Chorshin Bistei Halavan Erev Sheviis. So now we're talking about the grain field. It's called a white field because it doesn't have shade.
Ah, all right, because we said that was a field of grain or beans,
Mhm.
right?
Right. So it's called the white field because it doesn't have shade. And the halacha is ad shetich lehalecha until the moisture has finished from the field. Kozman shebnei adam chorshin lita b'mikshaos of midlaus. All the time that people will still plow in order to sow with cucumbers and gourds. Is that right? Or
Uh,
b'mikshaos? No. What are maybe are
Cucumbers,
those tools? Sorry,
cucumbers, or
cucumbers
gourds.
and
Gourds.
gourds. Cucumbers and gourds. Okay. Amar Rabbi Shimon. Nasata Torah kol echad ve'echad biyado. Rabbi Shimon objects to the Tanakama over here and says, but you've made this a whole relative share. At some places you're going to permit, in some places you're going to prohibit, and it's all according to everyone's opinion. And he
Sure.
says, no, just the shear is fixed. It's up until Pesach for white fields, and up
Mhm.
until Shavuos for tree fields finished.
So when we're talking about grain and bean field, I was having this discussion with this whole thing about kitnios. Now kitnios is grains, but string
Kidneys
beans,
is not grains. Kidneys are legumes.
legumes. I mean,
Yeah.
but they're not usually. We're not talking about greens. We're not talking about. We are talking about that's kitnios, but they're talking about string beans or peas. Why
Hmm.
should they be considered kitnios? Why should they
Uh,
be?
I, I don't follow the question.
Do I have that right? When we said before, why should they? I have it mixed up with something else. I'm sorry. I have it mixed up with something else. I have something mixed up with something else. All right, I get it straight in my mind. It was something else we were having this discussion about, and we're saying why are greens considered, kitnios also? Because they're green. They're not like another color. I think that's what they said.
I don't understand why the color has any impact on it.
I'll find out. I'll let you know tomorrow, Mr. Shem. I'll find out
Okay.
what he was saying. Okay.
All right, Mishna base. Zablin u'ma'adrin b'mikshaus of midlaus ad Rosh Hashanah. So for these things, you're allowed to for cucumbers and for gourds, you're allowed to fertilize and hoe all the way up until Rosh Hashanah. V'chein b'beis hashlachin, and similarly in an irrigated field. Miyablin liabel is to chotchim et hayabalos shebe'ilan. Are you allowed to cut the blemishes off the tree? Okay, mafarkin, you can take things apart. Notlin alim me'al ha'ilan, which actually you can take leaves off the tree in order to lighten its load. So basically pruning a little bit. Okay, it's not quite pruning, it's just sort of cutting off some of the leaves to lighten the load of the tree. Ma'abkin is to put dust. You put sand, thin sand onto the roots of the tree in order to cover them up. So all these things, uma'ashnin, and you can smoke. What do you do smoke for? You raise smoke under the tree in order to kill the bugs in it,
Right. Right.
all the way up until Rosh Hashanah. Okay, Rabbi Shimon Omer af notelhu es ha'aleh mina eshkol b'shvius. So Rabbi Shimon says, never mind that. Even during Sheviis, you're allowed to, let's say you've got a grapevine and you've got leaves that are covering up the cluster and it's going to impede its growth. So you're allowed to break off that leaf even during the Sheviis, says Rabbi Shimon. Even during Sheviis, because why? He says because the only work that's asked for Sheviis, all of the work that we see that's asked here is only b'divrei sofrim, the
Mm-hmm.
plow. And there are only certain melachas that you're not allowed to do in the field is plowing and sowing, I think. But in terms of pruning the tree or cutting whatever, those are melachas derabanan. So now he says, therefore, this is Rabbi Shimon. There's no gezerah to answer them at all on on Erev. I beg your pardon. This is the everyone's opinion is that all of these malachas that we saw, the smoking or whatever, there was no need to be gozer on all of these malachas Erev Sheviis
Uh,
up until Rosh Hashanah. But now Rabbi Shimon comes and says it's even mutter to take the leaf off the cluster even during Sheviis, because whereas the Tanna Kama says no, that you couldn't do. You could only do it in Erev Sheviis. And so why does Rabbi Shimon disagree? Says even during Sheviis you're allowed to do this because there's no improvement to the tree. All you're doing is doing an act that things shouldn't come to damage,
right.
shouldn't come to be damaged. Okay, and there are those who explain that Rabbi Shimon is not even disagreeing with the Tanna Kama. It's only when there's a leaf that is right next to the cluster and is damaging it, right? Then he says that it's mutar to pluck it during Shemitah, because
What
his
about
intention is only to protect the eshkol.
right.
It seems the Tanna Kama disagrees with that.
What about the dates and figs with dates? They cover them in a like a cloth,
During
right?
in order to protect it from birds and
Generally,
things.
just yeah, protect them. Can you do that during Shevius then? Because you're
So
protecting.
that's the thing, is that the fruits of the field are also supposed to be hefker for birds and animals.
Uh huh.
So any kind of shmira is probably not allowed. Um, I don't remember a Mishnah that says that explicitly, but the psukim about the shmita do say that it's got to be like totally hefker, and you can't even have I don't think, even if you have a gate that only a human could open and any human could come in, but you're preventing animals from coming in, I don't even know if that's permitted.
So that would have to be done covered before Rosh Hashanah then,
Possibly, yeah.
or Shavuos,
Mm.
right?
And just
Okay.
agriculturally speaking, I don't know if that would work, because at that point the flowers haven't even formed yet.
Right. Right.
So you're gonna need some insects to come and pollinate your
Right. True.
flowers and
True.
um,
I was just thinking about that. Okay.
okay. Um,
Kalayim.
Kilayim
Uh,
Zayin Ches.
Ches. A perforated plot. A perforated plant pot renders forbidden in a vineyard, but one that is not perforated does not render forbidden. Reb Shimon says both are unlawful, yet are not rendered forbidden. If one carries a perforated plant pot through a vineyard, if it increased by 1/200, it's forbidden. Vineyard kalayim may neither be sown nor maintained, and it is forbidden to derive any benefit from seed. Seed kalayim may neither be sown nor maintained, but it is permitted to eat it and, of course, to derive benefit from it. Any benefit may be derived from kalayim garments, and it is only forbidden to wear them. It is permitted to rear kalayim animals, and it is only forbidden to breed them. Animal kalayim may not be paired one with the other. A domestic animal with a domestic animal, a wild animal with a wild animal, a domestic animal with a wild animal, and a wild animal with a domestic animal, unclean with unclean, clean with clean, unclean with clean, clean with unclean, are forbidden to plow, to draw, and to drive. Okay.
Demai hay base.
If one wishes to separate Truma and Truma Meiser jointly, he takes one part in 33 and 1/3, and says 1/100th of what is here on this side is Chulin, and the rest is Truma for the whole. And 1/100th Chulin that is here, and on this side is Meiser, and on the rest adjoining it is Meiser. That which I rendered Meiser is Truma Meiser, and for it, and the rest is Chala, and Meiser Sheni in the north or in the south of it, and it is redeemed with money. If one buys from a baker, he may separate tithe from the warm for the cold, and from the cold for the warm, even of several molds. So says Reb Meir. Reb Yehuda forbids, because I say yesterday's wheat was from one and today's wheat from another. Reb Shimon forbids in the case of Truma Maisha, but permits in the case of Challah. If one buys from a bread seller, he must tithe every mold. So says Reb Meir. And Rabbi Yehuda says from one for all. And Rabbi Yehuda says agrees that when one buys from a monopolist, monopolist,
Monopolist.
I know, just
Hmm.
monopolist, he must tithe every mold. I haven't played that game in a long time, so I guess. Okay, Zion.
Hey,
Hey
Zion,
Zion. Hey Zion. The water that comes up in a boat, on the bilge, or on the oars is not included in the law. On the traps and various types of nets is not included in the law. If water is, but if he shook them, it is included in the law. If someone transports a boat to the Great Sea in order to strengthen it, if he takes a nail out to the rain to strengthen it, or if he leaves a firebrand in the rain in order to extinguish it, this is included in the law. The cover of tables and the mat of bricks are not included in the law, but if he shook them, they are included in the law. Any stream of liquid is tahor except for ziphite, honey, and azipakis. Beth Shammai says also a porridge of split beans or whole beans because the stream springs back. Okay.
Kalim, Kaf base.
A table that had one of its legs removed is tahor. A second leg was removed, it is tahor. If the third leg was removed, it is tameh when one has intent for it. But Yoshi says no
Now
intent
you
is
can reuse it because once all the legs have been removed, it's now a working surface again. So as soon
right.
as he has intention to use this now as a work surface, then it becomes a kli.
But Roshi says no intent is necessary, and the same is true for a dilufik. The lufik.
But the halacha doesn't follow Rabbi Yossi here.
A bench that one had its ends removed is tahor. If the second end was removed, it is tahor. If it has a height of one handbreadth, it is tameh. A footstool that has one of its ends removed is tameh, and the same is true for the stool in front of a kadera. Regarding a bridal chair whose panels were removed, Beit Shammai ruled the chair tameh, but Beit Hillel rules it tahor. Beit Shammai says even if the frame of the chair is tameh. Regarding a chair that was attached to a kneading trough, Beit Shammai rules the chair tameh, but Beit Hillel rules it tamor, and Beit Shammai says even a chair built into the trough is tameh.
Well, yeah. Yeah. Okay, that's it.
Okay.
Marcos base. Hey.
Direct roads were laid out from one to another, as it is said, "Prepare the way for yourself and divide in three parts." They would appoint for them two Torah scholars so that he should not kill on the way, and they would speak to him. But Meir says he too should speak to himself, as it is said, "This is the matter of the murderer." Yossi Bar Ben Yehuda says to begin with, both the unintentional and the intentional murderers hasten to the cities of refuge. Excuse me, and the court summons and brings them from there. Whoever is found by the court to be liable to the death penalty, they execute. And whoever is found not to be liable to the death penalty is free. Whoever is found liable to exile, they return him to his place, as it is said, and the congregation shall return him to a city of refuge. When the Kohen Gadol was anointed with the anointment oil, or one inaugurated by donning the additional vestments, or one who has stepped down from his position, his death allows the murderer to return.
Yeah, that's there are three types of coin gadol. That's what the Mishnah is just pointing out. It's some get anointed. Originally, they were done with the anointing oil, but when they lost that, then he just became a coin gadol by virtue of putting on the begadim. And then even a coin gadol who's retired is his death is also enough to atone for the Ratzach.
I think that we had a mission, something about a mother was praying that,
Mm-hmm.
right? We had that mission, right?
Yes, yes, it's coming up.
Right. And whoever is found not to be liable to the death penalty, they free. Whoever is found liable to exile, they return him to his place. The Pasuk says, and the congregation will return him to a city of refuge. When the Kohen Gadol was anointed with the anointment oil, or one inaugurated by donning the additional vestments, or one who has stepped down from his position, excuse me, his death allows the murderer to return. Rabbi Yehuda says even the death of the Kohen anointed for battle allows the murderer to return. Therefore, the mothers of the Kohanim would supply them with food and clothing, so they should not pray for their sons to die. If after the sentence was passed, the Kohen Gadol died, he is not exiled. If the Kohen Gadol died before his sentence was passed and they appointed another one instead, then his sentence was passed. He returns upon the death of the second one. If his sentence was passed without a Kohen Gadol, or if he killed a Kohen Gadol, or if a Kohen Gadol killed, he never leaves there. He may not leave there either for testimony related to a mitzvah, for testimony related to monetary cases, or for testimony related to capital cases. Even if Israel needs him, even if he is the general of the army of Israel, like Yoav the son of Tzizruah, he may never leave there, as it is said, who fled there shall be his dwelling, there shall be his death, and there shall be his burial. Just as a city affords refuge, so its boundaries afford refuge. If a murderer went out of the boundary and the Goel Hadam encountered him, Yossi HaGalili says it is an obligation upon the Goel Hadam to kill him, and it is optional for anyone else. Rabbi Kiva said it is optional for the Goel Hadam and anyone else who is not liable for him.
If anyone else kills him, in other words, he's not chayav for killing him, but it's not the right thing to do.
If a tree was standing within the boundary and its branches extended beyond the boundary, or it was standing beyond the boundary and its branches extended into the boundary, everything follows the branches. If he killed in that city, he is exiled from section to section, but a Levi is exiled from city to city.
As a Levite can't say, "Oh, look, I'm already living in an Ir Levium. I don't need to leave anyway." And so, no, if he needs a galus, if a Levi needs a galus, he needs to go to a different city. Okay.
Science fiction movies where they used to, if a guy was found guilty, they would put him in like a spaceship. He was exiled to the spaceship. He didn't die, but he was living. That's what that reminds me.
Yes, משהו בזה. Okay, Baitza.
We may not, excuse me, we may not be counted initially for the meat of an animal on Yom Tov, but we may be counted of its meat prior to Yom Tov, and slaughter and apportion it among ourselves. Rabbi Yehuda says a person may weigh meat against a utensil or against a chopper, but the Chachamim say we may not use a scale at all. We may not sharpen the knife on Yom Tov, but we may sharpen one against the other. A person may not say to a butcher, weigh me out a dinner's worth of meat, but he may slaughter an animal, and they may apportion the meat among themselves.
Because measuring it out exactly is like derech masa matan. You're doing business here. That's not allowed. But they can do a deal and sort out be'erich after Yom Tov.
A person may say to his friend, fill up this vessel for me, but not with a measure. Rabbi Yehuda says, if it is measuring a vessel, if it is a measuring vessel, he may not fill it. It happened that Abba Shaul ben Batnis filled his measures before Yom Tov and gave them to his customers on Yom Tov. Abba Shaul says even during Chol HaMoed he did so for the correctness of the measures. The Chachamim said even on weekdays he did so to drain the measures. A person may go to a shopkeeper with whom he is familiar and say to him, give me a number of eggs or nuts, for this is the mode of a private person to count off in his home.
So even though it's a specific number, and you could say, okay, well, I mean, the price of a dozen eggs is so much. Nonetheless, that's just, how else are you going to ask for eggs?
Right.
Okay, that's it. We're done.
I'm trying to think of what this person was speaking about. It couldn't be legumes. I have to ask him again. I forgot. My memory is really shot.
Okay.
Have a great day. And what
you too.
Thursday, Friday? How's that gonna work?
I think things are going to be pretty normal. I mean, are you a Bechor?
Yom Bechor.
So do you need to get to a Siyum, or will you already have been at a Siyum by the time we start Shir?
We made our own Siyum, but that's not good, right? Okay. No, well, there'll be a Siyum, so that should be fine. It'll be early in the morning anyway. I assume we're starting.
Okay, so no problem. So no problem on Thursday. Okay. On Friday, Friday. It's not Erev Pesach. Right. it's just time of Friday. So
Friday. No. Okay, so we should be okay.
Yeah, we should be fine.
Terrific.
Okay.
Thank
you too. Kol tov. Bye.